Hello and welcome to Kingston Now. I'm Jimmy Buff. Shayne Gallo has been mayor of Kingston for almost 6 months. A little later on in the show, we're going to check in with the mayor to see how it's going for him and to get an update on the state of Kingston. First, though, we're going to take a look back and meet the people from Friends of Historic Kingston with board member Particia Murphy and city historian Ed Ford. Hi, folks.
Hi.
Good morning.
Patricia, how long has Friends of Historic Kingston been around?
Friends of Historic Kingston was formed in 1965. As a matter of fact, Ed was one of the founding members, and Fred J. Johnston, whom you might call our patron saint, was also one of the founding members. It was founded in response to things that were going on in the city, such as the threat to demolish City Hall and other historic structures. And I myself did not become a member until 1997. I'm kind of a newcomer. Ed brought me in, as a matter of fact, when we were left the Fred J. Johnston House as a bequest with the mandate to operate it as a museum, and Ed asked me to become involved and help with the opening of that museum, and I'm so glad he did.
Well,
Because
Great, well, we'll talk about that in a moment, but Ed, what was going on in 1965 that Patricia was talking about?
well, first of all, there was a group of ladies who had formed a get-together to help the Senate House, and some things that the state wouldn't do or didn't have money for, appropriated for. And these ladies would restore furniture or paintings and things of that kind. So then in 1965, urban renewal was started to become on the horizon. And so the group of people, we all met up in the plaza somewhere, 65, and the group was called the Friends of the Senate House, and they said, let's change the name to Friends of Historic Kingston and be more encompassing of a historical society, and maybe we can address some of these problems that are coming up, and that's how that's how it started.
You mean the Senate House didn't always look like it does today, a beautiful museum?
Well, it looked like that, but it's still the same way. But they still had things that were changed over a period of years. Sure.
Was there actually a concern that the Senate House might be
No.
destroyed for?
No.
Okay.
No, I think it was urban renewal, which began downtown.
Sure.
And as soon as they could see that all this expanse of property being taken and everything wiped out in one side of the street, Broadway, then they thought, well, there was talk about Uptown, which did come. And so Friends of Historic Kingston wanted to have a part in what they could say in defense of preservation.
Now, prior to the organization being formed, it was left to individuals, for instance, like Fred Johnston, who I understand took it upon himself to save what is now the Johnston Museum. Can you talk about that, Patricia?
Sure, yes. In 1938, Mr. Johnston, who was just starting in the antiques business, and it was hardly a profitable business for him at that time, he was renting a basement shop on Main Street within full view of what became the Johnston House, and he heard that the property was probably going to be sold and the house would be demolished to make way for a gas station. You have to remember, this is when cars are becoming popular. That's hard to believe that was always not true. But anyhow, he passionately wanted to save the house from being demolished. So he approached Ulster Savings Bank, and they agreed to loan him the money. So he rescued the house by buying it, and he spent the remainder of his life preserving it and restoring it. And we're celebrating the 200th anniversary of the house this season at our museums. The house was built in 1812.
Ed, who built the house in 1812?
Well, John Saddam is supposed to I don't know if he actually built it or whether there was anybody before him, but the house was built on the foundation of part of an old Revolutionary War stone house that had burned in 1777.
By the British.
So, by the British. And there are still some remnants, I believe, in the basement of that foundation.
Now, what makes the house historical besides its age? Were there famous people who stayed there at times?
Oh, there were a lot. I think, Pat, you probably know better than I.
Yes, John Sudan was a state senator. He was also a prominent attorney here in Kingston, but he was a state senator and he was a member of the Board of Regents. He was very close friends with Washington Irving and Martin Van Buren, and both of them stayed in the house overnight. So it has that history.
Terrific. We're going to talk more about Kingston history when we return with Particia Murphy and Ed Ford in a moment. Welcome back to Kingston Now. This week we're talking with Friends of Historic Kingston with former president and board member Particia Murphy and city historian Ed Ford. So you guys have just helped celebrate the 200th anniversary of Governor George Clinton. There's a big ceremony at the Old Dutch Church in uptown Kingston. Ed, tell me about George Clinton and what he means to the city of Kingston and to New York State, the country too.
Right. Well, what brought this about, it was not a celebration, it's a commemoration first. Because April 20th of this year was the 200th anniversary of the death of George Clinton in Washington, D.C., April 20th, 1812. And so it seemed important to me earlier in the year that we should commemorate that date. And a committee was called together, and a group of people from the county, the city, the historical groups, county historian, all of these people got together, about a dozen people. And we had meetings every week, and we talked about what we could do to properly commemorate this occasion. And what came up, of course, was first thing was to lay wreaths on the monument. And it turned out to be about 10 or 11 or something like that. And so the date was set for April the 20th, Friday. And so then they said, well, it would be nice if we had bands and all of that. Got two bands. One was the Kingston High School, and the other one was the Merchant Marine Academy Band. And they formed at Academy Green, and they were marched over. And what the great thing about it is that I think I'll never forget, and maybe these kids will never forget, they asked the school children from George Washington School, 4th grade, and St. Joseph's, probably the same grade, who study American history, to march along with behind the band. And they loved it, and they marched over. And you know, those kids will never forget that occasion in their whole life. They said, we were part of that George Clinton celebration.
And how exciting it is for kids to hear about actual American history that happened in their neighborhood.
Well,
now, George was what, the first official governor, right?
George Clinton was the first governor of New York State. He was sworn in as governor on July 30th of 1777. And then the assembly had already met and formulated the state government. And then the Senate House, they met in September 10th, I think it was, 10th or 20th of 1777. And that set the stage for the British coming up the river on October 16th to land here and burn the whole town, because Kingston had become the first capital of New York State. And so, as you know, they did. They burned every frame building, of course, burned every barn, hay barracks, everything they had in there. Stone houses would be burned on the interior. Roofs would be burned off in lots of cases. Sometimes they didn't burn as much as, some didn't burn as much as others. Who knows whether the wind shifted or the troops who were afraid that George Clinton's troops were coming up to confront them, whether they hurried or not, I don't know. But we'll never know that. But at any rate, it was devastating for the Kingston to be burned like that by the British.
And then he went on to become vice president.
He was re-elected 6 more times. He was governor for 7 3-year terms, 21 years. Probably, the longest any governor, and maybe the longest governor in the whole country, for all I know, because that is a long period of time for one man to be governor. But he did it. And then he went on to become vice president under Thomas Jefferson in his 2nd term, and then James Madison in his 1st term. And then in 1812, George Clinton was presiding over the Senate, of course, as a vice president. that year, that's when he died, in April of 1820.
In many ways, he can be considered a native son
1812.
of Kingston. He was born in a part of Ulster County, which is now part of Orange County, but he was born in Ulster County. At a very young age, he was appointed county clerk, which was an office he held for his entire life, regardless of all the other offices that he held. He married a Kingston girl, Cornelia Tappan. They worshipped at the Old Dutch Church, and his inauguration took place at the Ulster County Courthouse. So Kingston really can lay claim to this national hero.
Now, Friends of Historic Kingston does walking tours during the season, which is upon us. Are there sites? I mean, I know that George Clinton ran, for instance, some of the military operations for the Revolutionary War from that small house right over on Crown Street. Is that correct? That little house? No?
Not really.
No, no.
His brother-in-law lived there.
Because
Yes.
they put a big historic marker up there.
It's wrong. I'm trying to get rid of that marker. Put it back where it belongs.
Put it back where it belongs. Okay. So what is the walking
George,
tour?
where does the walking tour go?
What do they compromise?
We visit the site of Clinton's grave. We visit the courthouse, the Four Corners, the Christopher Tappan House, which was he was the deputy county clerk. He was George Clinton's brother-in-law. We basically take people through the streets of the neighborhood that was laid out by Peter Stuyvesant in 1658, one of the oldest neighborhoods in America.
Terrific. Well, keep up the great work, both of you. Thanks. This is Kingston Now, and next up we'll check up with the current mayor of Kingston, Shayne Gallo. You're watching Kingston Now, and we're joined by our returning champion, Mayor Shayne Gallo. Hi, Mayor.
Jimmy, how you doing?
Now, I called you our returning champion because I think this now makes you our most frequent guest on the show. You were first on back at the end of last year when you decided to run for mayor. You were on when we talked to some of the other candidates, and you've been on a couple times since you've become mayor. It's almost 6 months now. How's it going? How's it feel?
Well, it's been a challenge. It's encouraging the support from the public and the business community, and there seems to be a consensus that Kingston's ready to move forward, and I can't do it without that kind of a partnership, and I'm just very gratified that what we've done in the past almost 6 months has really been as the result of working together, not only with other government officials, but with the private sector and with not-for-profit groups and citizens throughout the city, and really expand the capacity that Kingston has, okay? Because we're at a point critical in our history where we have so much to offer, and people are so interested in coming to Kingston. We get so much good press and publicity from the downstate media. So it's a long answer to your question, but I'm very pleased with the support, and but I must say it's a challenge, and it's been a lot of work.
Were you able to, I mean, you've been in city government before, so were you able to anticipate any of these kind of challenges? Were there any big surprises in the first few months? Like, oh, I didn't know I'd have to deal with that.
Yes and no. Big surprises, yes, with some of the issues I've had to deal with in terms of restructuring government and taking a different approach to running government as a business, literally right on down to all forms of government spending. I knew it would be a challenge, but it just seems to be week after week there's a financial issue or a budgetary issue which perhaps should have been handled differently in the past, which causes us in the moment to have to, rethink and restructure and reinvent government. And the public demands transparency and accountability. So, yes, but it's all things considered. I'm very pleased because the department heads I've surrounded myself with and the employees are working very diligently and trying to provide those services efficiently to the taxpayers.
So how's Kingston doing? Where are we at?
Kingston, well, it depends on what part of Kingston. I think that we're in the right place in the right time in our city's history. In terms of what we're doing downtown on the waterfront, there's many things going on with respect to the Clearwater Museum. The barn should be done by the fall. You're going to have the trolley line, which will be refurbished, which will connect out to Kingston Point. We're in the process of trying to seek funding through the governor's consolidated funding application process for the promenade, okay, at the Hudson Valley Landing project. It's a housing project which is very exciting, which will create a new neighborhood for Kingston, but will provide Kingston a mile-long walkway that begins at North Street and goes to East Kingston, okay, which is in the town of Ulster, making Kingston a destination which will stimulate interest in that housing project. We're in the process, we're going to do a design study for the rail trail from the Strand Trolley Museum to East Chester Street. So downtown, as you can see, things are moving, okay, and we're very pleased to that end. We're having our 4th of July celebration on the 4th. By the way, we're the state's first capital. We want to celebrate it. We want to celebrate our historical birthday, and we want to celebrate it in terms of being a family day and a fun day, so we're looking forward to that. Midtown now. Let's move to Midtown. I already stated that we're working on that design for the rail trail connecting the Strand to East Chester Street. In Midtown, though, there's some exciting things going on. First of all, you might have noticed, okay, right down the street at King's Inn, I'm in the process, it's going to be 6 months from now before we really get that site shovel ready and a proposal's issued for its development, notwithstanding having interest in developing that site from prospective developers. In the meantime, or in the interim, what I'd like to do, and we've already planted shrubs, we're putting in a community garden, benches and planters, and we're also going to create parking for UPAC, okay, at that site. And we received a donation from a gentleman, a Kingston resident and his family, okay, to that end. So it's no cost to the taxpayers. And that site, what we like to do in the interim is use it potentially, and we're looking into it as a Midtown farmers market, which will supplement the Uptown farmers market without competing with it. Along with, at the end of August, as part of our Movies Under the Stars program, which we're also going to have movies down on the waterfront starting in June and other parts of Kingston's parks system. The site King's Inn will be used for Movies Under the Stars, okay, program. And during the day, we'll have a block party. So we'll shut down Cedar to Henry Street, and we'll open up that site for basically kind of a local block party reflecting the diversity of Midtown and the neighborhood with food and a lot of fun for all and entertainment. So I'm looking forward to that. That's what we're doing in Midtown. And I'm also trying to see if we can actually get the police station, okay, put it at the Bank of America, okay, location. We're in the process of looking into that. Because I think basically you would probably stimulate interest in the 15 to 20 unoccupied storefronts. It'd make King's Inn exponentially worth a lot more, okay, in value to a prospective developer. And it would just provide a real good core presence of our police to reconnect to the city and using that site, okay, to provide a service throughout the entire city. So it would be win-win for everyone. And the concern about tax dollars being lost is at the auction recently, there was only one bid, which was under the bid price. And albeit the tax assessed value of the property is in excess of $1 million, the bid price was, let's say, in 6 figures, okay, but in the low 6 figures, which would reflect that whoever purchases that property is going to get a substantial reduction in their assessment. So to critics who say, oh, you're going to be taking a piece of property off the tax rolls, my response is we're going to expand our tax base by stimulating interest in Midtown's revitalization, and in the process help appreciate property values all around that site, okay, be it on the west and east side of Broadway, and affect the value of the King's Inn parcel as well. Uptown, all kinds of things going on, from the planning of events this fall. Same thing downtown and Midtown as noted. Want to get out a proposal to be shovel ready, okay, for the parking garage within the next 6 months. We're working on. We're addressing issues of the Uptown community with regard, business community with regard to parking, with regard to the street configuration, where there's some issue with some of the one-way streets which actually don't afford access to the to the Uptown businessman's district. And people have a tendency when they get off the thruway to drive literally through Uptown, and end up either in Rhinebeck or back out on Broadway and go back up to 28.
Yeah, they miss Uptown.
Right, and then with just a couple things quickly. What we need to do is, and I've been looking into it, we may have some money from DEC Greenway, and it could be as part of our comprehensive plan. We need to create interpretive signage. We have sign clutter in Kingston. It doesn't offer us a destination for prospective tourists or people who want to come in and go to a restaurant or to an event. So I'm in the process right now of accepting a proposal which would provide destinational signage to deal with the sign clutter, simplify the signage throughout the city, starting from the kiosk off the thruway and continuing along Washington Avenue, directing individuals to either the historic district, the Midtown district, you know, the arts digital business corridor right here, which is what it is, and then the waterfront. Now, as part of this, the idea would be to put on the overpass here, the Greenkill Avenue bridge, interpretive signage like an LED, where you have splashy art, government message, business message, and community events running 24/7, which is kind of neat because it will not only spruce up and aesthetically be more pleasing to look at, but it will provide people with literally, you know, a focus as to how they can move about the city, what's going on, what businesses are out there doing businesses, what events are happening, and certain community messages.
Well, we appreciate you coming back and talking to us. There's so much to talk about with you. We'll get you back here soon. Terrific. Thank you, Mayor. That's it for this week's show. Thanks to Particia Murphy of Friends of Historic Kingston, Kingston City Historian Ed Ford, and Mayor Shayne Gallo for joining us. Remember, all our shows are now archived on our YouTube channel, and you can find the link on our Facebook page. You can also suggest topics for future shows on Facebook. For Kingston Now, I'm Jimmy Buff. See you next time.